Good evening. It is Monday, June the 19th, about 7:15 p.m. This is meteorologist Shay Gibson with Weather Flow, bringing you a tropics update. Haven't done one of these in a while, right? So we started June the 1st. Here we are, sort of still in the middle of June, and we're seeing the main development region fire off. So more of an August pattern as we're seeing, but there's reasons for that, and I'll go into that in just a minute. Let me go ahead and just put myself in the corner here and get down, and you can see the map here for the NHC. Today we ended up getting tropical storm Bret, winds of 40 miles per hour, minimum central pressure at 1008 millibars, and this thing is heading off to the west at 21 miles per hour. It's scooting along pretty quick, and that may end up being some of its downfall as we go into time. So let's take a quick look at the track from the warnings and cone static images. And right now, the NHC is calling for this to become a hurricane by the time it reaches the Lesser Antilles. So leewards, windwards included, Lesser Antilles being the outer rim of islands and the Greater Antilles being inwards towards Puerto Rico, DR, and those areas there. So one of the things to keep in mind about this track is know that as we get out towards Thursday, this track may widen. If this becomes more of a hurricane a little bit sooner and it ends up being a little bit stronger, the stronger hurricanes tend to go a little bit northwards over the islands, and the weaker ones tend to scoot right into the Caribbean across the island. So that's the general consensus, but that doesn't mean it will absolutely happen. Just know that this cone of uncertainty could widen over time. I think the southernmost track will probably hold, but the northern track will probably grow a little bit in time. There are some limiting factors as it does enter towards the Greater Antilles. Is that that's going to be a ridge that's going to be building down over. Upper shear is going to be increasing over the system as what the NHC is depicting as fading down to a tropical storm or weakening at this point. So without going into too much details on those maps, just know that the forward speed of the system, sometimes it can outrun its own moisture pocket that it's laden in, right? And then it creates its own upper shear, so to speak. So as the storm goes this way, the upper shear, the winds going this way, tend to sort of, or actually kind of west-northwest to east-southeast across it, with the storm heading in this direction, ends up kind of shearing off its own limited building factor vertically from the system. So that's something to keep in mind. This may end up being a very weak hurricane. I'd be surprised if it really grows in strength, but then again, we just have to follow NHC guidance on this. If this storm does slow down, it may gain a little bit of traction on that end. But I think the forward speed and momentum of this system is going to be really taking off. So wind speed probabilities looks like the majority of the force go right through St. Lucia, these areas, right down the middle of the Lesser Antilles. If we look at some of the arrival time of the winds, let me just put this on 5-day wind speed probabilities. We're looking at Wednesday p.m. into Thursday a.m. is when those winds are going to start to arrive, tropical storm force winds for those areas. Now, key messages from what the NHC is saying is that it is forecast to strengthen and move across the Lesser Antilles as a hurricane on Thursday and Friday. Risk of flooding from heavy rain, hurricane force winds, and dangerous storms, surge, and waves. Now, that is always going to be part of a hurricane. The high risk of flooding, especially from the higher elevations down the mountains to the ocean. And also given the unusual certainty, larger than usual uncertainty in the track forecast, it's too early to specify the location and magnitude of where these hazards could occur. So we still don't have the tropical storm force warnings, the hurricane warnings, any of those warnings in effect yet. And probably by tomorrow or tomorrow night, we may see some of those being issued for the Thursday. So we have to get usually within a 48 to 72 hour window before they start to issue those those warnings and watches and warnings. So just keep that in mind. If we look at the invisible red satellite for the system, we can see that Bret does have some convection firing up. Looks like the center somewhere here off the northwest quadrant. A lot of the moisture pocket training off to the southeast and also off to the northeast of the system. And this system is going to continue to track off to the west and even maybe turn to the west-northwest just a little bit over the next 8 to 12 hours. Overall satellite view behind this is Invest 93L. So we're watching that very closely. It has a 40% chance to form the next 48 hours and a 50% chance to form the next 7 days. This I don't think is going to take the same track as Bret. Bret's going to be going a little faster. This one actually not too much slower behind it. But I think what's going to happen is Bret's going to end up lifting up towards Puerto Rico and get hammered by upper shear and some of that forcing down from a ridge up in that way, and it may just get hammered down to a tropical storm or depression at this point. It may not be of much impact beyond that. It looks like Invest 93L has more of a track where it gets recurved out to sea as an upper trough starts to dig down and pull it up away from the coast. So that's the general consensus for 93L. But again, we're still several days out to make that call. Too early as we go forward in time. Let's look at the NOAA sea surface temperature anomalies, and this is what's driving it. So we talk about El Nino every year and having more upper shear across systems across the Atlantic, more upper shear from these directions, westerly directions, southwest, west northwest, west, all these in the above. However, with record warmth of sea surface temperatures for this time of the year, including all the way up into these areas, we're talking about sea surface temperatures being problematic through the summer. We may see more of these systems develop in the main development region, which basically spans from the Cape Verde Islands off of Africa and all the way down to the lower latitudes. So this is basically the main development region, this zone right here, called the Intertropical Convergence Zone. So this is where we're going to be watching a lot of systems possibly develop simply because of the record warmth of these sea surface temperatures, which are anomalously warm for this time of the year. So that's what's kind of going on. If we look at the ocean heat content, really not a lot until we get towards the Lesser Antilles and over into the Caribbean. It's not that high right now. We don't expect this to grow until we get into August and September, where we see these OHCs really grow higher. And these are measured in kilojoules per centimeter squared, where the warmth of the water goes deeper down into the pelagic zones and actually fuels the systems more, especially the slower moving ones. It can churn up cooler waters in its wake, but for the meantime, it has plenty of surface fuel that's deep warm water ahead of it. So that's what we look for as well. So not a lot of ocean heat content. So any systems that are moving quickly would actually have a better chance of forming over these zones than anything else. We look at the current winds for the area. We're looking at Sandy Point. We're looking at British Virgin Islands, Two Brothers, and it looks like from the GFS forecast going forward, looks like winds, if the GFS model does pan out, looks like Friday night to Saturday morning look pretty strong as we start to gain on Saturday day where the peak winds are. Only showing about 35, maybe 40 miles an hour, but if the storm does develop into a hurricane, of course, these winds will go up. Just giving you an idea of the timeline of what the GFS is showing from a micro scale standpoint from one sensor from their forecast. So that one is 28 feet above ground level. It's also higher up in elevation as well. So just keep that in mind. A little bit biased on the wind readings, but at least it's something to say. But the easterly trades are kicking through there about 13 to 17 knots right now overall. We expect that to increase and get worse on Saturday as the storming activity increases as well. So with that said, I'll go ahead and end the tropical outlook for the next few days, hoping that Bret stays a minimal Category 1 hurricane at best if it does get there. There are some weakening, limiting factors on it. If it gets to Category 2 or 3, I'd be really surprised. We'll just have to wait and see. The next 24, 48 hours will be crucial to see what kind of moisture pocket envelops around the system. If it's able to gain convection around the core and maintain that, that's what we're looking for. We're also looking for mid-level low over surface low pressure. So that'll also be key as well. Right now, the mid-level low is just off to the south and east of the system where the surface low is out ahead of it. If those two become aligned, we see more outflow as we're seeing in this chart here. I know Levi Cowan on Tropical Tidbits does a really good job at explaining all this, but you can see this radial outflow starting to occur and even off to the southern flanks of it as well. That's a healthy sign of the storm starting to breathe. So if we continue to see this pattern and the storm actually gets convection wrapped around the core and holds that convection without lopping it off to the eastern side of it, then we're going to see a stronger system. But for now, I think we're going to maintain a tropical storm for the next 24 hours and then see what goes on from there. Until next time, everybody, take care. I'll probably do another update tomorrow evening. And until next time, everybody, stay tuned, especially if you're in the Lesser Antilles. Be prepared for a hurricane either way. It's never too early. Thanks, everyone. Good night.